Welcome back to the unofficial Squarespace Entrepreneur Podcast. Today I'm here with Kacey Musick of Jupiter Dev, and I'm really excited for this conversation because I think Kacey fills a very unique gap in space in the market that's always needed, and that is the need for custom code. Kacey, do you mind introducing yourself and telling us a little bit about how you got here?
Sure. Thank you so much for having me on, first of all, Amari. My name is Casey. My pronouns are they, them. I do run Jupiter Development Studio, which is a Squarespace specific development studio that focuses mostly on providing development for designers in the kind of like Squarespace world. I think, what is at least my personal approach, which is to provide like kind of kind, nice, approachable, non-gatekept development services on like via social media and definitely to designers to try to like kind of bridge the gap between designer and developer. I kind of call myself a dev bestie because I really wanted to feel like a fun friendship between designer and developer. So that's what I've been focusing on lately.
So, what got you into the world of web development? Was this always a thing for you, or was this something that kind of like evolved out of something else?
It definitely evolved out of something else. I was working in restaurants for most of my life, and when the pandemic hit and restaurants closed, I ended up starting my own business, which at first was more of like a VA business, and I was
Hmm.
working with like lawyers specifically, and kind of like a random twist of fate. And no matter where our scope started, I would always kind of end up working on like websites and design. And uh, Basically, they all had Squarespace websites, and so I learned the platform really early on. And because it seemed like there was a need for specifically Squarespace design, I started
Hmm.
taking the I Love Creative's Squarespace design course. And that really like started the path to being a Squarespace specific kind of design studio with Jupiter. And then once I started designing sites, I really realized that I liked the development part. And once I got into the development side of things, I realized that that was really where I kind of came alive and really found um, like what they sing about in love songs.
Yeah.
Like it really clicked. And
Hmm.
I realized that because I had a community of designers based off of my like education and stuff, it was really nice to like offer those services to colleagues to kind of get reps in and to get better at development itself. So that's been the most recent iteration, but one that
Yeah.
feels like it's gonna stick.
So I think that's really fascinating because I had a guest a couple episodes ago who was also coming from the hospitality space into the web design space at the same time for the same reason, and
Mm-hmm.
making, similar discoveries about how those skills translate into the digital world. Can you talk a little bit about hospitality and development and kind of how you see that?
Yeah, I think if you've worked in a restaurant, and especially if you've worked in restaurants as I was front of house, and so I started as a back waiter, I moved up to front waiter, I'm a certified sommelier, I was a general manager. I feel like if you have worked in a restaurant, you can really do anything. It teaches you so much about like a collective, about a lot of moving parts coming together. It teaches
Mm.
you about kind of prioritizing and how to like focus and chaos and all of these things that can be applied to, I believe, pretty much every profession. And I
Yeah.
think with development specifically, you have this like highly specialized language of if you're using CSS or JavaScript or kind of like whatever you're actually using. And I think with Squarespace in particular, it's like you kind of learn the structure and then you can kind of improvise on top of that, which is kind of to say like in terms of like restaurants, there's dinner starts at 5, people come in, you have the menu, you have kind of the way that a meal goes, like beverages first, appetizers, entrees, dessert, like there's kind of the structure that's there. But then it's kind of up to you as the server and the table to really create the experience. And there's a lot of different kind of variations within that. So,
Hmm.
I think that there's something also about, you know, the being really able to handle a lot of things that feel really high priority. You know, you have five
Yeah.
tables and it's 8 p.m. and there's a line out the door and there's rush and like all of this stuff. And then you're cool and calm and collected. And I think bringing that into a CSS window when you get that error message and you just
Mhm.
don't know what's wrong, I think is like directly related. And I think that that's also kind of what's exciting about,
Yeah.
CSS. Not the error window. I'm not trying to say like errors are so much fun, but figuring out how to get something to move in a certain way, or how to like figure something out like that, and to find the kind of the joy in that, I think is
Hmm.
directly related to hospitality, and understanding that what you're doing is for the benefit and the experience of your client, who could be another designer, like for me. But also like by taking care of my clients, the designer, they're
Yeah.
better able to take care of their clients, their, the service providers. And it just like feels really connected in that way.
Yeah.
And I think something that should be that I like to center, at least in the way that I approach development, for sure.
I watch a lot of kitchen shows. I'm just like really
Yeah.
interested in the world. I could never do it or whatever, but like I love to eat and I love to watch the process and the high pressure environment. To me,
Hmm.
it's like wow. And
Yeah.
I can definitely see how that translates to startup world or any other world. In fact,
Hmm.
like listening to you, it's like yeah, hospitality is should really be a sub-discipline in every industry as opposed to just the industry all by itself. Um, I saw a story on Instagram that you posted recently on your transition story. Talk to me a
Hmm.
little bit about being queer in development and how that plays out for you and your experience and just why it's a significant part of your identity and your brand.
Absolutely. I feel like being a trans person, being a queer person, I'm, and especially transitioning later in life. I was like 33 when I started my gender transition, and I'm 38 now, and I feel like I I was fully cooked. You know what I mean? Like my brain was
Mhm.
done. I was like a complete adult. I had this big career, and to kind of go back and change some like pretty fundamental programs of
Mhm.
myself, I think has really taught me and given me the experience of perspective, and realizing that there are things that feel really solid and really unchangeable, and like you wouldn't ever think that there's anything to even do there, but
Mhm.
actually there's like possibility in those same kind of
Mhm.
seemingly immovable things. And I
Mhm.
think my being trans, I think, makes me a really good developer, because I don't believe that things cannot be done. I really understand that, like, it may seem like this summary block doesn't want to do X, Y, and Z, but I like have a belief that, like, what
Yeah.
happens if we just kind of forget the rules for a second, and like what happens if we like challenge this thing, in a
Mhm.
way, and kind of see what else is there. And I think that it's again kind of directly related. Like my realization of my own, queerness and my own transness absolutely benefits my problem solving skills, and being
Yeah.
able to see something that is, quote unquote reality, and being like, maybe there's something else there, and then finding solution kind of within those limitations, I think is really the my differentiating factor when it comes to
Yeah.
development, specifically in something like Squarespace that already has this like kind of amazing structure. We love the structure of Squarespace, right?
Mhm.
And really being able to like play with that, I think is also what I find the most fun. Like that's kind of where the magic happens.
Yeah, you made me just crack up a minute ago the way you broke that down. Um, and then you kind of like brought me back to like as far as like positioning goes, I don't think you can get any better positioning as a problem solver than
Yeah.
what you just described.
Yeah, I mean it's a superpower. It's definitely something that may not be the majority experience for everybody, but is absolutely something that I hold very dear. Yeah.
Yeah, I relate to that like deep core belief that you just laid out because
Hmm.
I think it's when you zoom out of, you know, your flesh
Yeah.
and you look at like the fact that you started as nothing and you just came into something and you just kept like going, it shows you just the power of transformation
Yes.
and our ability to do that. I'm working on something now called the Digital Alchemy Lab, and since
Cool.
I mentioned transformation, I figured I'd bring it up with you right now. What
Please. Yeah.
what does that my first like thing is that I'm asking people is like, what does it bring to mind when you hear Digital Alchemy Lab?
I mean, the word alchemy is the thing that sticks out there, and that just being the transformation, but it's not, there's something about alchemy that also feels really like potent.
Mm,
It's like bringing things together to transform into maybe something better, deeper, more useful in some way. Like it sort
mm,
of feels like an elevation of transformation.
mm.
Is kind of my like initial thought. And it's kind of fun,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
alchemy
yeah.
is kind of like,
Of
let's
course.
tinker and let's like, I'm imagining like little like puffs of like colored smoke. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like kind of like like a science lab. That feels really cool. I
Yeah.
don't really know anything about it, so I don't know if I'm way off base or whatever, but
Yeah,
that's the vibe I'm getting.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm like this is a different process for me. I'm usually internal in my creative process where, you know, I'll sit with something for a long time and turn it over. But this time around, I'm turning things over with others and coming up with conclusions based off of their perceptions as well as my own. So I asked my wife this question yesterday, and she was like, "Yeah, it sounds like bringing things together, which you just said." So
Hmm.
I'm like, "All right, I definitely have to keep that in there." And then she was like, I feel like it's something to do with making the internet work for you, and maybe that's because
Mm,
she knows my experience, obviously,
right, right.
but yeah, I like that things coming together, and I like this idea of making the internet work for you because
Hmm.
that's been a core, you know, mission of mine for a long time. Um,
Absolutely.
let's switch gears for a second.
Sure.
Tell me, I mean, we've been talking a little bit about development. Um, so let's stay with the development for a bit. When it comes
Okay.
to like outsourcing development, because to me, like this is like a fundamental like Squarespace designer dilemma.
Hmm.
You get started and you want to do a little bit more than you are capable of, and your Google searches have brought you to a place of no, you know, there's nothing more. Um,
Yeah.
I I'm a firm like, you know, believer that like your businesses like yours are like always in need.
Hmm.
Um, outsourcing development, what should designers look for? What should they think about? At what point should they outsource development? Um, you know, like what's the lay of the land as far as your business goes and how you engage with your clients?
Yeah, I think like like a lot of things when it comes to starting your own business and freelancing and growing your business, these are all skills that take practice. And I think first kind of giving yourself the grace that you would if you were learning some sort of like technical skill, in the fact that it takes, it's going to maybe take a time or two to get it kind of down pat. And I think first and foremost, designers and developers or whoever is outsourcing, I think may get frustrated because it's not like perfect out like the first time out of the gate. And I think that with that in mind, I think it's important when you're outsourcing is like, I think first and foremost, you have to want to outsource. I think that there's, a very popular thought that the only way to make money or the only way to be successful or the only way to increase profits or the only way to like be a big business person is to start outsourcing. But I think that, first you have to want to do it. And then I think it's about finding someone who's like willing to like kind of let you practice, and maybe starting small. And I think specifically with development, I think it all comes down to the idea that I believe that kind of as it stands now, I think that we some people might approach the design process into development backward. And I think to start thinking about your design process, maybe before you reach out to a developer specifically for outsourcing, is to really reverse engineer your own design process. So you're starting at the development phase. Like what you are designing is
Mm-hmm.
100% going to be built, right? Like that is the point, is that we are going to make your design a website. And I
Hmm.
think starting with that absolute truth and kind of working backwards, I think is a good way to get prepared for development. So you know the pages, you have the images, you have the copy, you have like that stuff. And then you can like kind of work your way back into, you know, going into Figma or like wherever you go and really starting to like play all the pieces and kind of like putting things together. And I think organization is like a massive part of communication in terms of development.
Hmm.
And I think that concept of reverse engineering, I think, really helps get into outsourcing with a developer, because what I've experienced is when I work with a designer the first time, there's a lot of like checking in and communication and how about this? And there's just like a lot of back and forth. And as we move forward, we kind of learn each other's languages and we kind of create our own sort of path, and we get smoother and smoother
Hmm.
and better, and there's a skill set that's built up between us, that we can they can kind of predict what I'm going to say, I'm kind of going to be able to predict what they're going to design, and then we can kind of create like a shorthand.
Yeah.
But we have to get there, we have to
Yeah.
like go through it, and I think that's I hope that answers your question, because I don't
Yeah,
think
it
that there's
does.
like A, B, and C, but I think that thinking about it from development first will
Hmm.
100% help you outsource when you're just like kind of getting started.
Well, it leads me to my next question, which is what are your offerings? Because it sounds
Yeah,
like it would be good to kind of like go through things with you at the beginning of an engagement,
exactly.
to get that perspective that you just shared. So anyway, what are your core offerings and how have you gone about marketing them?
Yeah, the thing that I offer right now are development intensives. They are definitely in a metamorphosis right now because we love transition at Jupiter, and it has a lot to do with a development intensive. So specifically for Squarespace designers, I offer what is called Dev Days, and essentially it's like a week long development intensive where you submit like mock-ups and assets at the beginning of the week, and I deliver your website at the end of the week.
Mhm.
And I 100% encourage designers to think about me at the beginning of their contract with their client.
Mhm.
So like kind of knowing that they're going to outsource development for this project. I put it into an intensive format because there's definitely some parameters to that. Obviously, not every single website would be, you know, possible to build in a week. But what it does do is it allows me to, offer a flat rate, and it's easier for designers to incorporate it into a budget, incorporate it into a proposal, and again, kind of following in with that reverse engineering.
Yeah.
And what I like to do is it's really important to me to be like an approachable human who develops. I
Mhm.
think the development world is vast and there's like tons of different things that people can do within development and programming, but I don't see a lot of like faces and like fun and like, I try to be what I call myself the dev bestie, but what that really means is to approach our relationship like a best friend, which
Mhm.
means both kindness and like approachability. But it also means like honesty and like telling you like what's up, right? And like
Mhm.
really being clear and direct also, and just but like for the purpose of us being on the same page. So
Yeah.
I love Instagram, I love reels, I love kind of like doing kind of like slapsticky kind of like funny skits, right, to kind of show you what's up. I love a green screen moment to tell you about the different things that Squarespace has to offer in terms of its like out of the box structure and
Hmm.
the ways in which we can play with that. I love threads. I love getting on there and, doing one-liners and everything like that. And the whole point of that is because if we are going to be in this collaboration, right? If we're going to be a team, which is the idea of designer to developer, then we have to enjoy working together. And it just like really, I think, makes a difference when you are working with like a friend as opposed to somebody who might have a different attitude towards development that's a little bit more gatekeepy, a little bit less inclined to tell you exactly what they're going to do, but maybe less transparent, and maybe less into Squarespace than I am because I love Squarespace and I
Yeah.
really love what's possible in Squarespace and how, yes, I'm writing individual lines of code. There's not necessarily a button, but like that also opens us up to so many different things. So, um, but yeah, design intensives designed specifically for designers to be able to incorporate them from the beginning of their client work, so that they can like rely on me whenever they need without bringing in like an employee or something into your studio. It just like makes
Yeah.
it a little bit more accessible that way.
What does your summer look like? What's summer looking like for you now? Are you like taking time away from work? Are you going more into work? Like what's up with you right now?
I'm going more into work. I think I launched Dev Days at the beginning of the year, and as it's exiting its beta phase, and I worked with so many cool designers and really figured this offer out. I'm taking the kind of the weeks of June to like go into my own website and
Hmm.
really kind of redesign it and take all of the things that I've learned in terms of like marketing and copywriting and working with, I'm also outsourcing and working with a copywriter and working with a coach and like all of these things,
Hmm.
and really making that really clear and so that the client experience for me when designers come into my like ecosystem, my world, my Jupiter, that they know exactly what's going on. So that's June. And then July, August, September for the rest of the year, I'm really hoping to really like kind of book out these like design intensives,
Hmm.
so that, I the idea is that I work with, kind of like my pack of designers, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Because I
Hmm.
want to be available to folks, but there's also like enough wiggle room to bring new people in. And
Yeah.
I have like a one-on-one, if you need like coding help with your website, I have like one-on-one services as well. So it's going to be a really cool, like hopefully, booked and busy rest of the 2024. I mean, it's already June. I don't know how that
Hmm.
happened. So we're
I
just going to
know.
like keep going.
Yeah, I feel you on that. Yeah, I like that, refining your offer and then getting booked out.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, that's the plan.
I can imagine, having a collective of designers who orbit around you for,
Hmm.
tell me like the Jupiter thing, like the Jupiter
Yeah.
world, like how did that branding come about? What's the story
So
behind that?
it's like a little bit astrology, a little bit astronomy. So the more boring answer is the fact that Jupiter is this like massive planet in our solar system. It has this massive gravitational pull. I love this idea. When I started off as a VA, the idea was that I was Jupiter and that I would be able to manage all the moons in your orbit, right? That was my like thing, right? Because Jupiter has like over 100 moons or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But as it evolved, I really was identifying with this idea of astrologically, Jupiter is a planet that really magnifies and like encourages, it's like a benevolent force
Hmm.
within the astrological space. And basically, whatever it aligns with, it like uplifts and it, shines light on and encourages like learning and growth and transformation and all of these things. And I just really identify with that. I want that to be my force. Like when we team up, I want things to get like big and good and cool. And like, I want it to feel really potent. And I love the idea that there's this kind of like literal thing that Jupiter does and collects all of these moons, and
Hmm.
everybody's just kind of like vibing out there. But then I like this idea too of it being a way to describe, the symbol of that collaboration and the benefits of that collaboration. So yeah, that's where Jupiter came from, and it's just stuck no matter how many times I kind of reiterated the offering.
Yeah. You mentioned working with a coach. What has that experience been like? And when did you decide, okay, I need to find a coach?
Yeah, so I work with Kelsey at Coming Up Roses, and her whole thing is kind of doing things your own way. So she'll teach you technique and structure. So she has like a grow your own brand and a launch your own way like course offerings. And
Hmm.
what I loved about that was I firmly believe that there's thousands of ways to be successful. Like I don't think that you have to do it like everybody else. But I do think that there are, kind of like very real techniques that you can use to kind of get you through.
Hmm.
And it was beneficial for me because I need to like chat things out. I need to bounce ideas
Yeah.
off of people. I really need to collaborate in order to like get my own thoughts in order and to like understand what's possible. I really like it when people are way ahead of me in business or like way better at than me at business and different things because you just learn so much when you talk to people who are just like so good at what they do.
Hmm.
And I started those courses late last year, and it was an accident because I was like still doing design and development. But as I started taking these courses and working closely with Kelsey, I was just like, oh, wait, like I really like development. And it was her who was like, you like development? Like, what? Like, because that's not everybody's story, like
Right.
maybe
Yeah.
lean into that a little bit. And I don't know if I would have done that without that kind of outside force.
Hmm.
And kind of like through those classes also, which I think is kind of the main benefit of being a remote business owner and like connecting with a community is in fact meeting the other people who are taking that course and working with them and collaborating with them. And what's cool about like the Coming Up Roses crew is that it's not all web designers, definitely
Okay.
not all um, developers. And so you're really getting a lot of different perspectives.
Hmm.
And it's just been, I don't know, just like a really cool thing because then like from there I met a copywriter, and then like the copywriter and I are working on my copy, which I'm like, I
Yeah.
can write, but like it's cool to work with people who spend a lot of time doing the one thing, it's
Hmm.
like I really encourage that whenever possible so that that's kind of the service that I'm providing. Like I will develop for you so that you can just keep designing. Get really
Hmm.
good at that. I'll stick to development, get really good at that. I know the copywriter over here, and suddenly we are this community of people who can really offer a lot of high value. So, and that wouldn't have come, I don't think, if I hadn't pursued coaching and courses and like really focusing in on seeking mentorship, as that
Yeah.
kind of like guiding light.
Yeah. I think it's like hard to not take that path that you just described.
Yeah.
Like right now, I'm at a point where I'm like, I think I need a coach for what I'm trying to do next because I'm like,
Yeah.
I know this feeling and I know how to like get somebody else out of it, but I needed someone else to get me out of this.
Yes.
Um, and I like how you said the Coming Up Roses crew like that. It just like rolls off easily. So shout out to Kelsey
Yeah.
on that.
Yeah.
Um,
Shout out.
Oh, that's how I want people to be about the digital alchemist. They're like the digital alchemy crew. Or yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. Because it's expansive. Like she has a successful program, and she just like, is generous as a coach, but it's also you need models. Like you need representation of kind of
Hmm.
what feels right for you. And
Yeah.
it's cool to see people be generous and successful and open and in alignment and all of those things. So it's like the curriculum that the course provides, but the community, all of the stuff that is kind of just floating around in those spaces is, I think, extremely valuable. So yeah.
You mentioned the I Love Creatives course, and
Hmm.
I should probably reach out to Puno soon because every other
Yes.
episode someone mentions I Love Creatives course.
Yeah.
Are there any other Squarespace courses that have
Yes.
impacted you?
For sure. So, I mean, Puno and I Love Creatives is, I think, all of our sort of like creation stories. It's like that, that, I guess not class at school, that like community of
Mm-hmm.
like kind of like educating, was massive for me. Being able to access that kind of, information
Yeah.
was absolutely how I was able to start my business and, like do all of this stuff.
Yeah.
And it is 100% kind of like start there. I knew that I could tell early on that the designs that were in my head, I really needed CSS and code to like really see them through.
Mm-hmm.
So I started taking the Square Stylist course, Rachel's course,
Mm-hmm.
for Standout Squarespace. And what was funny is I graduated or I got my certification for I Love Creatives, the Squarespace design course, like the week before Fluid Engine was released.
Okay.
And then I started taking Rachel's Standout Squarespace course, which was also kind of in Classic Editor. So I had this kind of really rooted education in Classic Editor, and then I
Mm-hmm.
was able to follow both of those like course makers as they learned Fluid Engine and as they started creating curriculum around Fluid Engine. And I like at the time I was like, great, great,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
but what it did is it allowed me, I kind of got like a double education, and was able to like kind of have a foundation that I then built off of.
Yeah.
Um, and Rachel's class, I don't know if you are familiar with it, but it's like
Yeah.
she is so um she's just so smart, and like is really incredible. And I love the course, and um it was really challenging at first, and I stubbornly did not like that it wasn't just like easily getting into my head. And so I started practicing more and more. And
Yeah.
just kind of one day it started to click. And, it was just like this cool, unintentional,
Yeah.
you know, evolution into this. And I still like go to the boards and ask her questions and, like try to have like really open communication because
Yeah.
it seems like she knows everything. So I'll just like
Yeah.
keep going back there.
Yeah, shout out to Rach too with
Yeah.
Standout Squarespace. Summer, I always associate summer with what I call Squarespace Summer School,
Mm,
where you just level up your
yes.
Squarespace skills. It's every summer for me in this space. It's been 10 years now, has been like a level up of some sort. Like, and it's
Yeah.
always been some immersion in something I didn't know previously. Um, so it's really
I
cool
love
to
that.
hear your experience because it speaks to like the quality and really the impact of their work. Um, and the other every other Squarespace, course out there. I think it's
Yes.
just really cool what everyone has done to serve this community, and to serve, everyone coming up. It's like it's always amazing to me to hear how these stories play out.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure.
Um, Casey, wrapping it up, do you
Sure.
have any advice for our listeners or anything special that you want to share that we didn't get to?
Let's see. I mean, we really touched on a lot of the stuff. I think it's mostly, I think about, maybe it's cheesy, but I just want to, my instinct is to say, trust the process.
Okay.
Because I'm hearing myself kind of answer your questions and I'm reminded of the sort of accidental path that has brought me here,
Mm-hmm.
and how even though it feels accidental in retrospect, there was no like wasted movement. There was no, like, oh, I took the long way around, or, kind of
Mm-hmm.
starting with the Squarespace design course and ending up in Standout Squarespace and having the intention of just designing and maybe not developing, and then realizing through another coach that maybe in fact I should just be developing. And it just kind of feels like I stumbled here, but I wouldn't have gotten here without taking all of those, making all of the decisions that led me here. So,
Yeah.
I feel like, you know, it might feel like a long process, but I don't know, I feel like it's important to follow your feet, just make the next decision, go ahead and like take action and see where it leads you, as opposed to maybe waiting for like the perfect idea and it to be perfect before
Hmm.
you put it out into the world. I think is really, um, I don't know, I think is really important. And I think especially in like the Squarespace designer development community at large, I think it's really good to just keep going and trust that you're going to get to wherever it is that you are going,
Hmm.
at the right pace and at the right time.
Thank you for sharing that because,
Yeah.
looking at you, it looks like you got it all together. You got a brand, you got a business, and I'm sure that's what a lot of us look like. We look like we've got it
Hmm.
all together, but hearing your story and hearing how it all came together, I think is a really alchemical story.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. Exactly. Yes.
So thank you for sharing, Casey. It's been a pleasure having you on the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Omar. I really appreciate it.
Take care.